You just have to be able to lead your team to believe in behind what you're doing, and for all of them to contribute too, because they're part of the making of it, right? And that could be really exciting because the ownership is so huge in that space. Whereas, if you have your mandate, yes, it's very clear what you need to do, but that's also really not that exciting because you're just delivering on what somebody had told you to do.
Welcome to Work Matters, where we explore what leaders can do to make work more productive, valuable, meaningful, and impactful. I am your host, Thomas Bertels.
Today's topic is intrapreneurship, how to build an innovative business inside the confines of a larger organization, which presents unique challenges and opportunities. I am talking with Tristin Brisbois. Tristin is the director of the Advanced Personalization Ideation Center, which is part of PepsiCo's global R&D organization. She is a scientist by training who in her current role leads the effort to build personalized digital solutions. In this discussion, we explore what the critical success factors are to build an innovative business inside a large organization, what the obstacles for corporate entrepreneurs are and how to overcome them, and how to secure resources and maintain leadership support. I hope you enjoy the conversation.
Tristin, welcome to the Work Matters podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Thomas. Always a pleasure speaking with you.
So, you're leading PepsiCo's Advanced Personalization Ideation Center. That's a mouthful, right? What's the big idea behind that?
So, Advanced Personalization Ideation Center. So we'll call it API Center for short. It makes it a little bit easier, rolls off the tongue a little bit better. Realistically, this is, it's been just over 2 years in the making. The reason we started this endeavor was because we saw some mass trends around personalization, right? So really think that is the way of the future, that consumers are going to be interacting more so in a different way and want different consumer experiences, especially in the digital platform. So my team's role and what the mission is for the API Center is to look at different technologies and digital solutions to bring personalization at scale. Sounds simple, but bringing personalization at scale into the masses is actually pretty challenging. So we do focus a lot around kind of in two areas around, like I said, like the technologies and looking at what can be those accessible technologies that offer a frictionless experience, and then also looking at the behavior end of things. So we work a lot with different universities trying to understand the behavioral elements, because ultimately it's really, you want to create an experience that someone's obviously enjoyable, but also is like I said, kind of that frictionless, accessible. You want to keep people engaged and coming back to say like a platform.
This is not just a think tank inside PepsiCo. You're actually building some real products. What can you share about some of the interesting ideas that you and your team have been working on?
I guess we had the option of doing, more like a think tank and putting slides together and presenting concepts out and trying to sell that in, but that's just not really my personality. It's something that, I think that has probably helped us with the success of to be able to actually have something tangible to put in the hands and to show senior leaders and others within the company, because that's really how people can wrap their heads around what this could be and what is the business opportunity here. So, we started our journey creating a platform. It's called Aspire to Be. The whole concept of it was to try and have a platform that you could easily test and learn on. So it had to be flexible, the ability to be able to plug in new technologies. It'd have to work in different regions. We're a global company, so there was a lot of kind of factors that we brought into consideration when we're building this. But we also just really wanted to get it out quickly, and so just to really test and learn on it. So what was the like a true startup, was the minimal viable product that you could have that was good enough to put in the hands of consumers, but also give you better data than if you were just to do a consumer insight study online, for instance. So it turned into an app, and that's just an easy way to be able to have consumers download it, experience it. We settled on the original concept of biological age. And the reason we went with that concept was because it's universal, right? So people want to enjoy what they're doing in life for longer. Like, that is a universal concept. It's relevant across the globe. It's also relevant across different ages. And so, for us, this was a really exciting potential. And it's also a concept that people understand immediately. So, am I older or younger than my actual age, right? There isn't a lot of explanation that needs to happen. So we thought this could be a really powerful hook to bring people into a platform. And so we started with a platform called Aspire to Be. It was an app, but we needed some way to be able to provide that biometric information or those insights back to the consumer. And so, we had looked at different technologies. We had looked at different ways of sharing with individuals or assessing individuals' biological ages. And what we settled on was a face scan technology, which was really quite cool. So it's called transdermal optical imaging. It's not facial recognition. It's not taking a picture of the face. What it's doing is looking at blood flow patterns and pulse rates under the skin. And so from there, it's able to predict things like blood pressure, heart rate variability. And so we're using it as a proxy for biological age based on the proprietary algorithm that we've put together to be able to give, some indication of it's more around fitness, physical fitness at this point, but obviously we can evolve this as we go forward. And what we found is that, it's because it was such an accessible way, like you can run this technology off of anybody's device. So it was integrated into the application. We were seeing like 80% trial rates right out of the gate. And, thinking about it more and as especially getting into like the manuscript writing and kind of reflecting back onto what we've done and why was it so successful for that particular use cases or for users to be engaged. And I don't think it was the technology itself. Like, I don't think the draw was people like, I really want to do a face scan. Like, I think the draw was that it was just such an easy and frictionless experience, right? Like, it was just, you do a 30-second scan, it gives you the output, and that's it. It wasn't, upload a picture, or we were thinking of, do a blood draw. Like, that would have been, horrendous kind of thing for barriers. But that was something, those were earlier kind of prototypes that we had thought about and looked through, and, you're looking at what the consumer experience would be. There's no way that we would get to the same numbers or the scalability that you can with something like this that can be, plugged into any mobile device or website for that matter too. Another big exciting endeavor is around looking at developing a hydration model. And that would be something that, obviously half our business is beverages, but in particular for our Gatorade brand and for starting with athletes and then moving into the general population could be a really exciting space. So, that could absolutely revolutionize how you're able to assess someone's hydration status. If you can imagine, in 30 seconds, you could get whether you're hydrated or not. So exciting stuff there. Lots of work with our GSSI, so our Gatorade Sports Science Institute partners there and our Gatorade brand team. So
our topic is entrepreneurship. In your views, like, what are some of the typical success factors to make entrepreneurship work in a large organization?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not. It hasn't been without its challenges for sure. But I think we've done some things that have made it really quite successful. And so I think one is for sure having leadership support. So Antonio Tatarani heads up our life sciences department. So that's actually where my team sits. So we sit within life sciences, within R&D, within PepsiCo. He's been a fantastic champion of this. He's also the chief medical officer for the company. Has been an amazing supporter throughout, and also just great sounding board guide throughout it all as well. And so as our CSO, so our Chief Scientific Officer, so Renee Lammers, has also been very supportive of the work that we did and believed in what we were doing, at least enough to let us play with it and see what we can do and come back with some proof points. And so, I think that has helped, and not only just with, like I said, like the guiding of it, but also just to be able to get into the right conversations when you're ready. And so that's the other thing that, it's been really important to know when to keep the head down and to work through it and, put the ego aside and just, create and generate products that provide data back that then can be presented back in some sort of meaningful way that resonates with what are leaders or stakeholders that then you're going to pitch it to, because essentially that's what we're doing, right? We're like a startup within the company, and so you have to then pitch your ideas the same way as you would as a budding startup company. I do have a guiding board, so I have two different guiding boards. One has been a set of internal executives, and that's grown and changed over the years. So we've been in operation, like I said, like just over 2 years. And that's been really helpful too, not only just to kind of get the right expertise or comments or whatnot, as because we call these pivot persevere meetings. So either we're going in the right direction or we need to switch course, but also to help, like, oh, okay, that's really interesting, and I'm doing this. Let me introduce you to so and so. And so it's just that network is really, really important, and also kind of helps with the success and growth and trajectory kind of these types of programs. I'd say that, at times this has been, a bit of the bane of my existence, but we have a very small team with a relatively small budget, right? And so, we can always use more money, we can always use more people, but keeping it small, you almost sort of fly under the radar a little bit. Like, no one's really going to come knocking, and if they did, it's not even worth their time, right, to get the money back or whatever it might be at this point. And so it kind of allows you that space to really, be able to play around with things, get the data that you need, be able to build something from scratch, learn the lessons that you need to learn, and nobody really kind of breathing down your throat for results because they haven't invested there's a lot of money into this space. And so it's more of like, okay, you know what, like everybody's happy with the sunken cost, if there is any. But because of that, because we are limited in people and funds, we have to be very scrappy and creative around how do you then, bring in, or how do you operate. And so, we work very much with and depend very much on our external and internal partners. So work a lot internally with different subject matter experts. I said, some of them are part of the guiding board, but then even beyond that. So we work a lot with our strategy and transformation team, which, that team is helping us actually rebuild our platform internally to some extent. We work with our brand teams, we work with insights, design, and they've really been able to help us then elevate the expertise that we have within the team. And then also on the other end, work a lot with different tech partners, right? So originally we had built the platform externally, and we still run it that way too for the full program, and that for the foreseeable future, that probably makes the most sense. But obviously the tech partners, we didn't create the face scan technology from scratch kind of thing, right? So working with different groups on, how do you bring that into the fold? And then universities have been a huge, huge part of what we do too, and in different ways. So some of it has been bringing in their subject matter expertise, particularly around the space of wearables and then also behavioral economics. And then, finally, it's been sort of, and especially now where we're looking at how can we leverage even the student bodies to be able to almost have like learning labs within the different spaces to be able to, test out our model or validate the models that we're creating. And so that's the other kind of space that we've really been able to lean into. So yeah, so I know it's a very long-winded answer, but leadership, leadership in different ways, small resource, small budget and team has been very successful. And yeah, and I think just like, big network within the company, all of those things has really kind of led us to, the success that we've been able to show so far.
So what are the typical obstacles, right, that corporate entrepreneurs face? And how do you get over those hurdles?
Big companies, there's a lot of layers. There's also a lot of bureaucracy. And so, how to navigate that, that can be a challenge. Some of it seems, because we are a big company, when we want to move fast. So if we're operating like a startup, you want to go quickly and just to get the data that you need. But then it comes to a point where you can't really do that because you have to fall under what the corporation, rigor. So IT security reviews, for instance, data security, and all those things are super, super important. And absolutely, you would not want to compromise in those spaces. So, to overcome that particular obstacle, it was really important to position things like this as a pilot. And we kept, the app, for instance, under voucher code, so under test code. And so then you don't have that risk, and you don't have to go through then the same security reviews when you're testing and learning, a concept. And so then it's less time invested on our team's end, and it's less time invested like for the IT review and legal, etc., kind of thing, right? And so, if you can work within a space that everybody's comfortable with, that allows you still to go at a pace that you need. But now we're at a spot like, okay, if we are going to scale, now we have to go through, but we're sure that what we have, has some legs in it, and we have brand support and whatever it might be. And so then at that point, that's the right time to engage the rest of the layers. And even with our tech partners, so for just to give an example, like for the security reviews, the tech partners have to answer a 440 question, page questionnaire kind of thing. Like, can you imagine if you just, approached a tech company, they've never worked with you before, and you put this in front of them? There's no way that they would want to enter that partnership, right? And so, I think that if you can find creative ways to make sure that everybody understands what you're trying to do, have the right kind of stopgaps in place to make sure that it doesn't blow up and it doesn't get out of hand, but then still allows you the freedom to be able to get the data that you need, and then with the promise to then, when it's ready, if it's even that, if even that is the right tech to go forward with, then you're committed to going into that space. So I think that's been a way to kind of that navigate that bureaucracy, rules and regulations that you have to abide to as a big company, which I think is great, because then when you do come out with something, then everybody should know that the integrity of that is of the highest level, right? Like, we cannot afford to put anything out that is going to jeopardize our reputation or anything like that, or the consumer trust. And so, I think it's a really interesting space to be in. And, I feel very fortunate to be able to be working in this type of space, because, you can still have that freedom to, kind of operate in a scrappy fashion, but then also know that whatever product that you're eventually going to go with has all the right checks and balances in behind it, that you maintain that consumer trust and that integrity in behind it. So, I think it's been a great experience so far.
So resources is always an issue, right, for startups, but I guess also for ventures inside a large organization. And not only just to get the funding, right, to get the budget, but also to get the talent. What's been your approach to attract the talent that you need? Because I can imagine that probably there's plenty of interesting roles within PepsiCo, right? People could do other things. How have you been able to get top talent?
This type of work, it's really a personality type, right? So it is people that are okay with working in ambiguous spaces, and that can be tough, especially in a science world. So we sit, within life sciences, very, advanced degrees space. You're trained to be a very logical thinker. A lot of people like to have, what exactly do I need to do, and how do I get there? But others, such as myself, I get really excited about a blank slate. Like, it's like, here's our end goal of what we're trying to achieve, and being able to set that, and then figuring out what are the steps to be able to get there, and how do you build that. And it might not be, there's certainly not going to be one linear path. I think it's just depends on who gets really energized about that ambiguity and working through the space and being able to create. And it's not to say that it's not a scientific process, because I think actually it probably is more so than even like a marketing process. Like, it's very much what's your hypothesis, let's test it out, see what we get back from it, and then move from there. So I've been very fortunate that have been able to have a great group of individuals come through the center. So I've had actually a complete changeover of the team once, and that's has been a great experience, because it has allowed us to shift with the resources that we need at the time. So, with the center and how we've worked, because we are working like a startup does. So year one was kind of ideate and then create. So, we went from an idea on a page to the app in 10 months. Great. Now it's pilot that, and we went in 4 different directions, looking at 4 different go-to-market strategies, different potential avenues there. Well, that then requires a little bit of a different skill set, and so the ability to bring people in, and that's also been whether they formally report to me or whether they are within the company, but of coming in for critical experience. That's kind of been the approach, bringing in subject matter experts when needed and for a certain amount of time. And it's been very valuable for those individuals too, because it's a completely different experience than what they would have had in their normal day job. So I think it's worked very well. It's all about how you spin it, right? Like you can complain about, not enough resources or being small or whatever it might be, or you can look at it as like, okay, this is what we have, but we have the freedom to do whatever we want. Who do we need to partner with to be able to make this happen? Who else wants to contribute to this space? And I think that attitude and that kind of, it depends on, you just, I guess, as a leader, you just have to be able to lead your team to believe in behind what you're doing, and for all of them to contribute too, because they're part of the making of it, right? And that could be really exciting because the ownership is so huge in that space. Whereas, if you have your mandate, yes, it's very clear what you need to do, but that's also really not that exciting because you're just delivering on what somebody had told you to do. So I think it's been a great experience. I've had no issues with getting in top talent, and our team has performed really well year over year. We actually just received what they call the PAS Awards, the PepsiCo Academy of Sciences award for the technology and the platform. And so, I think there's quite a few accolades that the team has garnered over the last couple of years. So that says something to it for sure.
One of the challenges that I see, right, companies always struggle with that they some of them are successful in building a product, but then the larger question becomes, okay, how do we get that actually into the market? How do you kind of walk the last mile, creating, right, a space for the product to be part of a larger solution set?
Yeah, and it's really important to tie back to a brand for sure. So I think at the beginning we went out as brand agnostic, and that's probably the right move until you figure out who is the target consumer for this. And then at some point, yeah, it needs to tie back to a brand to be able to scale. And that just makes sense too, because that's obviously where more of the funds and the resources and everything like that come into play. And plus, it's really expensive to start up your own brand. And so, to create your own brand in this space and just get those consumer acquisitions and everything like that, like it would just be insurmountable. Like, why not tap into an existing brand in this space? And so, I think, for some individuals, they look at what we've done and they get it, and they're like, yeah, this is a great kind of brand amplification tool. We can use it, as let's say as a finite campaign for people to kind of get excited to create brand relevance. We have tested that, we asked about, brand relevance, credibility, etc. But then, there's other groups too that are seeing it, and rightfully so. Obviously you'd want this not just to be, a 4-week program, but something that then people come onto that platform and then stay onto it. So a rewards platform has been the other team that makes a lot of sense to work through, because that then, it's something that you're providing people. Anytime you ask people to come and do something, you have to give them something back of equal value in return. And so, is the biometric data enough for them? So those biological age, heart rate, stress index, whatever that might be, is that enough to give back to the users? Or do you also need to reward them with, points towards, whatever, Quaker products, Gatorade products, whatever that might look like? And so that's kind of been the approach there. I'd say that the US market has been probably one of the harder ones to kind of come on board, or probably maybe not the harder, that's not the right word. I think one of the last markets to come on board, because in the regions, they're like us, they don't have a lot of funds. They don't have, the means to be able to have really expensive marketing campaigns. So something like this is like, absolutely, can we please use this and try it out and whatnot? And so, we've had a lot of success in places like, we went to India was first. Latin America, kind of testing out the waters there. Asia Pacific for sure. So huge success in a pilot in Malaysia. China will be next. And so, it just depends on, how the company is structured and whatever it might be, because it is really hard to, we are still scientists by definition, right? We still sit within R&D. So, stay within your swim lanes and not really, to overstep the boundaries of, what is the right marketing play can be kind of a hard discussion situation or whatever it might be. But if you don't think through or don't have the ability to think through, how can you actually plug in this technology or platform or whatever it might be into the business plans, then it's not going to go anywhere either. And so it's not enough just to, build the model or whatever it might be, to then you have to take it one step further and actually even test it out and get the numbers of how best would this serve the brand. And I think that that's kind of what this team's done. That's a little bit unique in comparison to what is done previously, where you're almost taking it to that one step into the business case forward kind of thing to really generate those numbers and make it even much more convincing.
You've been in this role now for 3 years, give or take, right? What are some personal lessons that you have learned?
I'd say that some of it is definitely have to put the ego aside. Not that I had a huge ego to begin with, but it's one of those where, I think we brought it up a little bit earlier around you have to go fast, but there also has to be a level of patience, right? And so patience is definitely not one of my virtues, just in general. And so when you first generate those proof points, you're like, why can't everybody see how amazing this is, right? And it's like, well, no, it needs the time, it needs the thought, it needs that much more convincing data around it to actually be able to get to that next spot. Or why can't we're doing all this fantastic work, is being recognized, why isn't this team growing at the same pace as, let's say, other initiatives? And there's always reasons for that. And so I think that for me, it has really been that ability to be a bit more patient and understanding of where we're at along the trajectory. So I think that's been kind of one of the important lessons in this space. If you are able to kind of spread the champions for what you're doing far across the business and create this kind of bigger network, there's going to be big opportunities that present themselves. So an example for us, I mean, we, as part of the guiding board, we've been always very well connected with the Gatorade team, the GX platform. As part of their work, they kind of did an activation pre-Super Bowl around talking around like the future of Gatorade, different innovations and technologies, a piece of that. So we were able to be a part of that, so I was able to present then the work to our CEO, to the other heads of the organization, and then obviously also other key customers that came through the activation as a whole. But what that did was then unlock a ton of opportunities after that. So once people are able to see it and leaders are able to see it, then it's, you have the ability then to go a little bit further. It's like, well, this is just one piece of it. Like, we're just working with Gatorade for this particular part, but we're also looking at Quaker for this, and also working with our, HR partners in this direction. And so it really afforded those opportunities to then, get this in front of people that are high up in the companies that make the decisions, right? And are able then to kind of, that then trickles down to work and work streams that then, was really able to really allowed us to propel the efforts and get this to the next stage, which is where we're at right now. And I think the last thing in this is, coming a little bit back to leadership style. It's really important to be agile and to be able to flip any of those setbacks into opportunities. So I did talk about that our team had a complete changeover midway through. You could look at that as a negative, but like in reality, it was fantastic, because not only did those individuals go on to promotions in other parts of the business, so that's a fantastic, growth opportunity about people. And really that's, one of the main goals for sure is this critical experience and training ground and everything in that space. But it also allowed us for me to look at the team and look at what we need now going forward, and who are the right individuals and what are the right skill sets to then bring in. And so, that was a way to really flip those setbacks into opportunities. And there's lots of examples like that. I just, that has been something that, you have to be able to do that in these types of roles for sure, to be able to be successful in this space.
Yeah, I want to go back to a second for something that you said earlier on, right? When you talked about the role of the guiding board, right, or the sounding board. And I think there's something really interesting about how that was structured in your case, because it sounds like that you had a board that was not just sitting there in judgment, right, and sitting waiting for you to come and right, present your update and then kind of critique it. But it seems like it was a much more hands-on board who really then also got involved in opening up the doors that you needed to be opened, right, to get into the Gatorade organization, or tell us a little bit about that, like how that board was set up and what was useful about that.
Yeah, and some of it just started because who else in the business was working on personalization. So, like I said, like Gatorade, that's where we started this journey, right? With the GX sweat patch, with so for those that aren't familiar with that, it is a sweat patch that basically you put it on your left forearm, and it measures the amount of fluid and sodium loss during exercise. So then you get a very personalized hydration recommendation based on that. So it was within the life sciences team, the GSSI team, developed that technology, and then it was taken up by the brand and put into the GX platform. So, that made perfect sense to be able to be very well interconnected with that team. And the mandate started to be, what are we going to do to continue to support that group, but then also what can be done for the general population, right? So in general health and wellness and wellness space. So there were some other activities kind of done a little bit around Quaker and personalization, but so that's where it started anyways. Anybody that had any kind of, stiff in this place, because they also had a general interest. And I think that's what's been so great about this guiding board is that it wasn't like a nomination or like a forced, you must be on this kind of thing. It's all voluntary. It is when, asking people, being like, the work that you're doing I think is really interesting. I would love your expertise on this guiding board. Do you want to take part? And that's how it's grown. Two fantastic co-chairs. So Antonio Tacciarani, like I said, the head of life sciences, our chief medical officer, and then Sean Westcott, who is the lead for R&D in Europe, who's had a lot of experience in this space and his different career roles, different companies. And so for him, with those two, they have very different approaches. It's been fantastic to have kind of those different insights from both. It's like I said, it's grown, it's changed over the years. It's gaining more momentum, like more people are hearing about what we're doing. So then come to us, or are pushed in one way or another. So those meetings are a little bit of, here's the update, and then questions to them, like, are we going in the right direction, or this is our pivot point right now? What, based on experience, which direction should we go, this way, that way, kind of thing. And it's a good discussion around that space. What also comes up though too is like, oh, you should connect with so-and-so, or, there's somebody on my team that can help you with that. That kind of thing has also been kind of the beauty of that guiding board. And then sometimes you need almost a subset group depending on, the particular question that you're working on. It keeps us on track too, if nothing else, right? And it's also a really good way to look back to of just how much, because when you're moving so fast, you make so much progress over such a small period of time that you almost forget where, everything that's been done. And so it's a nice kind of longitudinal, because we meet every 6 weeks or so, give or take. And so, it kind of shows the progress of the team and where we pivoted and why. And so that also has a kind of a different purpose, but useful nonetheless.
What do you see as like the value of that experience as you step maybe into like a role that's more about running like an established organization? Are there any lessons learned that you think would be useful?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, the ability to be scrappy, to think about things differently. The network that now have within the company is massive in different like cross-functional teams across the organization has been huge. Just knowing that, or understanding how external partnerships can really help accelerate and fill gaps, is also invaluable in any role. I think this role too has been great to position of, not necessarily have to go to a more traditional role, or maybe what my career path was looking like prior to coming into a role like this. And so now, the aperture has just opened quite substantially in terms of, could you go do a role in a sales organization, or could you go do a role in marketing or strategy, and it depends on what the teams are looking for, but the experience is gained in this space because basically you're almost operating like a CEO of your own company, right? And so with that comes a lot of different experiences. Like, yeah, we don't necessarily have a P&L, but we're not that far off, right? Like, to be able to, generate those business cases and whatnot, you still have to act like you do, right? And so there's, I think that it definitely goes beyond your traditional kind of life sciences role, even beyond what you necessarily do within R&D. And, I feel very fortunate to be able to have done that. For formal training, during this journey, I just finished my master's business during that time frame, and so then that's also allowed me to have strong science background with a business background, which has been perfect, because that's essentially what we're doing, right? We're translating a science or technology into a business opportunity, and so that's exactly the skill set that they're teaching now when people go through their MBA program. So yeah, it's been overall great experience, and just like an exciting and very critical point in my career too, because it's a pivot point for me too. So exciting times ahead.
First of all, I'm super impressed, right, that you found the time while building, right, this startup, right, to also get a master's degree. So that only speaks, I think, to your capacity, right, to really make things happen. Tristin, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your experience about entrepreneurship in a large organization. I think it's a fascinating story. Really appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Thomas. It was a lot of fun.
We hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, be sure to subscribe, like, share, or comment. Until next time, let's make work matter.